Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Tim Lavarge. I'm the VP Marketing at CEI. We're going to give folks a couple minutes to file in here, and then we will get started shortly. Morning, everyone. Just for those who are filing in, we're just going to wait another 1 or 2 minutes to give everyone a chance to get logged in and get situated, and then we will get started. Thanks. All right. Good morning, everyone. So I am Tim Lavarge. I'm the VP Marketing at CEI. I am joined today by a couple of industry experts. So I'm going to go ahead and advance the slides here, and we're going to get started. A couple things to start. Everyone should be muted on your side. We ask that you kind of hold your comments and questions. If you do have questions, though, as we're going, there should be a window pane on your GoToWebinar module that allows you to submit questions, and we have a section at the end where we'd love to address those questions. So if you have them, please submit them. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the content here and let our experts share with you guys. So what we're talking about today is the impact of generative AI on managed services. We've got our team at CEI. We've partnered with AWS on this, and then Signet is a client of ours, and we have Cliff Donahue here from Signet to speak to some of the impact that this solution has had for them and his team. So just a quick overview of the agenda. We're going to go through introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about just AI in general as we get into the Signet solution. We're going to talk about the challenge they faced, the solution and the architecture that was created, and some of the results that they've seen. And then we'll get in a bit deeper into how CEI Clairvoyance, which is the service that we provide, the AI service that we provide, we are going to get a little bit more into the details of how that works. So as I said, our speakers here listed along the right-hand side. First is Joe Panino. He is our AWS sales director. The next is Jeff Tewksbury. He is a longtime veteran at CEI. He's our AI innovation lead. And Cliff Donahue, who is at Signet Jewelers as their VP of Enterprise Services. So you should be able to see them, their videos on your screen. We're probably going to drop video here so you guys can focus on the content of the presentation after the intros. But at this point, I am going to turn it over to these experts who know much more about this than I do and probably have much more engaging, interesting content to share. So Joe, without further ado, I will hand it over to you. You can give a quick overview of CEI and some of our capabilities, just real briefly, before we get into our case study with Signet.
Very good. Thanks, Tim. So hello again and good morning, and thank you for coming. Joe Panino, AWS Sales Director here at CEI. Wanted to just spend a couple of minutes providing you with an overview of CEI. We're over 31 years old now. We're based in Pittsburgh, and we're serving over 1,000 enterprise clients across a variety of industries. CEI is a certified minority-owned business. We've got a global presence. So as I mentioned, based in Pittsburgh, but we've got offices across the United States, the UK, Spain, Peru, and India. And we've got over 1,000 employees, as I mentioned. Also wanted to make special note of our attrition rate is less than 5%. We are making heavy investments in AI, specifically generative AI, which is the focal point of today's presentation. And it's a key piece of all of our CEI offerings, specifically here within AWS. We are considered an AWS Advanced Tier Partner. And we're also happy to have some folks from AWS on the call as well to support any questions that you may have. So appreciate the opportunity. Cliff, thank you for spending time with us today. Back to you, Tim.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate the rundown. And then at this point, actually, I'm going to hand it over to Jeff and Cliff, and they're going to take us most of the rest of the way to talk about the CEI solution and services that we partner with Signet and AWS on. So Jeff, it's over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Joe. And thanks everyone for joining. Like Tim said, my name is Jeff Tewksbury. I'm a principal architect here at CEI based out of Pittsburgh. I also lead our AI innovation team. So just a little bit about our AI innovation team. Really our mission, our purpose in life is to help customers just like Signet to envision and build solutions that maximize operational efficiency. So this could be building enterprise assistants to help offload kind of grunt or mundane tasks. This could be building research assistants to help augment the work that the teams are doing to provide additional scale and capacity. So that's really what we focus on, and we're lucky today to have Cliff Donahue with us to talk about such a solution. So welcome, Cliff. Good morning, Cliff. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jeff.
Do you mind just kind of introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about Signet?
Certainly. So again, my name is Cliff Donahue. I'm the Vice President in charge of Enterprise Services at Signet. That entails integrations, testing, and production support. Signet Jewelers, for those of you who aren't as aware, we are the global leader in diamond jewelry retailing. We own companies, brands such as Kay, Jared, Zales, Diamonds Direct, former People's Pagoda, Banter, things like that. We have over 2,500 stores nationwide, and we service everything from people just beginning to folks well established, and we have brands to match each one of those.
Awesome. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say it is Valentine's Day, so I promise this is not any kind of ploy to get people out there to buy Valentine's Day gifts or anything like that.
But the timing is curious.
Just a happy coincidence.
And the stores are still open, so
yeah, until late tonight. So but just saying. So anyways, Cliff, we've been working together for a long time, not just like me and you, but our two companies. Do you mind talking a little bit about the partnership that CEI and Signet have had over the past few years, and the kind of work that we've done?
Certainly. So our relationship started in 2018. We came together to look at how Signet was doing integrations. We knew that we were having challenges We were very batch oriented, and we certainly knew that there was a better way. We didn't even have a really strong inventory. So we reached out to CEI, and that first engagement was CEI coming in and helping us, do an inventory and start visioning what the future of integration could look like. That path continued, a slight pause during COVID, of course, but right afterwards, we continued to that. We designed with CEI the new architecture that we wanted, one that was much more real-time focused, asynchronous, as opposed to our very batch ETL heavy architecture. We also then expanded, and over the last 3 years, CEI has done our production support for all of our integration work. It's been a relationship that has grown over the last 3 years. And then finally, we've been working with you as we build out the new architecture, again, mostly focused around the coordination of AWS services, but your company has played an important role in converting things from the old method, which was very batch, very ETL focused, into the new asynchronous pub/sub model.
That's awesome. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit more. And Tim, if you don't mind jumping to the next slide. So like you said, like your organization, you transitioned to more of an event-driven architecture. Can you tell us a little bit about, maybe the previous architecture, the reasoning and kind of the planning around moving to that event-driven architecture, and really what kind of scale are we talking about here with this solution, and what are the benefits that you're seeing?
Sure. So in the beginning, we had an architecture, an integration layout that was mostly batch and mostly ETL. Now we're getting into one of my pet peeves, because that's one of the worst architectures I could have imagined. And so the problem with that is we had 4,000 batch jobs, again, mostly ETLs, running in the dark of the night, and saving up data to move or replicate in the wee hours of the night, all running, let's face it, 4,000 jobs. There's not a whole lot of room to not have them overlap. So as they overlap, they stress systems. One thing goes down, it could be a chain of events that can put us in a position where our stores aren't ready to open in the morning. And mind you, it's not just about opening stores. We have distribution centers, and those are operational at 6 in the morning. So there's a lot of problems with the architecture as it was. And so what we wanted to do is break all of those 4,000 batch jobs, again, mostly ETL, into more real-time, asynchronous pub/sub. As data changes, move it to wherever it needs to go. And the idea behind that is no longer are we worried about something breaking in the middle of the night, and now we're up against the clock to get things restarted. And instead, we've now got many distributed transactions that are running all day long as data changes. If something happens, now we have time to recover those individual items. There's no longer that clock. And as we come closer to, like all retailers, the holidays, and our volumes increase, again, we're not under the gun and worried that we can't service our customers. The new architecture, as we move to it, again, we went from 4,000 batch jobs processing transactions to individual transactions. Over the holidays, we processed over 10 million distinct messages per day. right? And so we got a lot of things flowing. So it was essential that we had things in place, but things do go wrong, and we need to be able to quickly respond to those. That was kind of the nature of the direction we were going. Our new architecture was, again, instead of using package solutions, which, as we tax those, and again, 4,000 ETLs is taxing any package solution. When they're running in a very short window, we experience a lot of problems. And so our philosophy was moving more towards a managed service provided by our partners, AWS. So we orchestrated an architecture around SNS and SQS, which allowed them to handle and worry about their notification service, their queuing services. And we just made sure that we orchestrated it on our end, that we were using it efficiently.
That's great, Cliff. And so 10 million messages a day over the holidays, that's obviously quite a large volume. So how are you structured there at Signet to support that broad scale integration platform? Can you talk a little bit about kind of the tools, the processes, and the team that help to make sure that everything is running smoothly?
Certainly, and it is important to remember when we first engaged CEI, we were all focused on the batch side of it, right? And so their team was brought in to manage those batches, to help us as those things broke down in the middle of the night, right? Our team was used to, especially over the holidays, we were working, nearly around the clock, because when something broke, it wasn't a quick fix. So the team that we brought in from CEI, that was the first thing we asked them to do. As we migrated to the new architecture, instead of having, large objects, large jobs breaking in the middle of the night and an all hands on deck kind of attitude, we were going to this smaller, discrete messages that were all day long. And so we needed the 24/7 support. We were using two separate tools, right? We were using PagerDuty, where we had the schedules built in, the notifications coming in, and the team working from that. But we also have ServiceNow, where we also manage the detail of the incident. So we had this team that we brought in. They were focused on the old style. And as we moved to the new style, they had to do both. They had to do it in multiple tools. And we had to find a way to make them as efficient as possible.
Yeah. So that new architecture and kind of that new world that you're in, can you talk maybe a little bit more about some of the specific challenges that you faced through the support of that solution?
Sure. I think the biggest challenge, and we quickly realized that things happen, right? And no matter how much we have automatic restarting, you will get to points where messages will fail, a service will be down, or the service will be busy, and we need to be aware of that, because we can't afford to misplace sales, and we can't afford to not have things as customer data comes in, it not be synced up. So we do need to be aware of it. And while the fix is usually very, very small, because there's so many, there's a lot of overhead to it. And so our challenge is, especially as we added new interfaces, we all know that the first time they go into production, you get a lot of incidents and it kind of tapers down. Well, we were converting a lot, and we saw the incidents starting to rise. And so our biggest first challenge was, how do we get this team who is still doing the old work, because I can't convert 4,000 interfaces at once because we're re-architecting. So how do we keep them still responsive to the old systems, but now looking at these new interfaces with a whole lot of smaller, discrete incidents coming in on a new technology. And that was the biggest challenge that was going to come out in front of us. We also knew that we had some budgetary constraints. We weren't going to be able to suddenly double the size of our team. So I had the team that I had. Incidents were rising. I saw our response times were slowing down, and our time to complete was also starting to slow down. And so these are the things that we were looking at, and at which point we turned to our partner, to CEI, to help us figure out how we can get through the holiday season with the team that we had, getting our response times back in and supporting the business as we need to.
Yeah, and I can imagine too. So you're talking about a support team where you have L1, L2, L3 support, and I imagine, I might be wrong, but I imagine there might be also some turnover on that L1 support, right? So people are kind of coming and going from time to time, and so there's also a need to ramp up quickly, right, as those people come on board.
It does. Our vision as we were doing this, we started breaking out into the L1, L2, and L3. And part of the reason was we want L2 or L1 to be the initial intake into the tickets. And the idea is they can shut down as many as possible. And it's only the more challenging things that get escalated and rerouted to L2 or L3, who
Right.
are our more deeply skilled resources. And so in order to make these levels work efficiently, right, I ideally don't want developers at L1, but the way we were at with the system as it was, with so many moving parts, I couldn't get them trained up fast enough, and I certainly could not get them to be experts in 4,000 batch interfaces, plus the hundreds of now real time that we were creating. So learning and retaining, and as someone left, bringing someone up to speed was quickly becoming a problem.
Yeah, and so maybe if we can go to the next slide, Tim, it'd be great, Cliff, if you can tell us a little bit about the solution. So this, it was pretty apparent early on that this was a phenomenal case for AI, because when we look at AI, we really look at it as being able to augment a team and being able to extract, decipher, and reason over information that we can present back. And so, the whole idea here was, can we make these L1 folks faster? Can we provide them with, rather than just them being presented with an issue, present them with not only the issue, but also, the recommended steps for resolution based on information. Do you mind, Cliff, just talking a little bit about kind of, the solution overall from your perspective?
Sure. So from a solution perspective, so right, you nailed it right on the head. It quickly became apparent that throughput was our problem, and as volumes grew, we're hitting the holidays, and we're going to be 5 times as much volume, that there was going to be a problem with throughput. And so we worked with CEI, and the first thing we thought of was AI, right? How do we process? We have past history on all of the batch stuff. We have years of history. On the newer stuff, things were happening that were very repetitive. And so if we can pull that information together, and be able to get that faster to our L1 analysts, we thought that could be our solution. That would be the key to getting us through the holidays. And so we did envision the solution where we took AI, and most of our batch issues were stored in ServiceNow. So let's tie it to ServiceNow, the repository. Let's be able to pull that in. Let's pull in information from PagerDuty, because again, PagerDuty had the latest and greatest as far as our incidents, but we also had our interfaces documented in runbooks. And so the idea was, how do we pull all these things together and make that information available to the analysts? And then of course it was, how do we give it to them? And the first thought was a chat, right? And I was like, okay, well, a chat is time consuming. So instead we thought of being able to link in and pull the incidents real time as they occur and do lookups and actually be able to supplement the PagerDuty tickets. And right there for the analyst, here are our prescribed resolutions for you. It might be one, it might be three. They were prioritized, they were stepped, and AI allowed us to do that, pulling from all that past information.
So that's awesome, Cliff. And it really is a powerful message in that we can use AI to present back those potential remediations to those L1 support folks based on work that's been done subsequently by, or previously by maybe the L2 or L3 to help identify and generate those runbooks. So Tim, if you don't mind going to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about what this architecture looks like. And there's a lot going on here, and this is kind of an extension of the current architecture because what was built was phase one, and now we're amidst kind of thinking through what would phase two of this look like. How can we improve it even further? But the whole idea is that through automated mechanisms, tickets get generated within ServiceNow for the ITSMs, and those get distributed out to the teams through PagerDuty. Now, whenever that information makes its way out through PagerDuty, we need to enable or enact our AI-based solution to be able to integrate between PagerDuty and the information that we have stored, as Cliff said, within our runbooks, within past history, things like that. So what we use there is Amazon Event Bridge or AWS Event Bridge. So that gives us a webhook into saying that now PagerDuty has an issue that's come through, and now we want to integrate with the back-end solution that can help augment that ticket. Now, outside of that, and kind of running prior to that, every night information and runbooks are indexed from Confluence. So as Cliff said, as new interfaces and integrations are brought on board as standard operating procedure, we need to make sure we have runbooks that identify who are the owners of this integration, what are the source and target systems, what are the data movement activities that are going on, what are the dependencies within that integration, to make sure that folks that are working on supporting these things and extending them in the future obviously have a way of being knowledgeable about what's been built to date. So those runbooks every night are indexed into Amazon Kendra, so that we have a searchable index where we can pull that information out. Now, what happens is whenever our event bridge is triggered from an incident coming in PagerDuty, Cliff already said it. It's exactly what he said. We pull information based on the information we find in the ticket. We'll pull information from Kendra in terms of what do we think are the playbooks that are impacted by this. We'll pull in the past incidents that are similar in nature through PagerDuty, and we'll kind of package that up. And then where the magic really happens is we pass that off to a Claude V2 model in Bedrock for Anthropic. And that model basically is responsible for parsing through that information, and then it's prompted specifically for these L1 engineers to help them to provide, or rather to provide them with recommendations. And as Cliff said, sometimes we know, oh, this is definitely the issue, you need to do XYZ and that'll resolve it. Sometimes it's more of a prioritized list of, well, first we would advise looking at this. Next, if that doesn't work, we would advise moving down this path. And so what we do then is we get that information back from Bedrock, again, acting kind of as our virtual L1 support are actually really kind of acting as our virtual L2 support to kind of troubleshoot this. And we then write that information back into the ticket, so back into PagerDuty, so that by the time that the support person has actually opened that ticket and they're going to start working on it, it not only has some information about the issue, maybe there's stack traces in there, maybe there's just fundamental kind of logging information in there, but also based on all that information, the recommended resolution that comes from our expert AI system. So you can kind of see there, if you look at the previous world, how that would have worked. It would have required that L1 support person to really digest that ticket. It would have required them to go out and find the appropriate run books, to look at past ticket history, to gather all that, and then to think through and reason through that. What do I want to do in this case? We're just kind of picking up that piece, that long pole in the tent, if you will, of the support workflow, and handing that resolution back off to that L1 support. So next, if you don't mind, Tim.
Hey, Jeff, if I just thought of something,
sure.
if you don't mind me adding. So the thing that I really like, right, is a lot of people who put this in would have thought, let's go ahead and let's integrate into the PagerDuty repository or the ServiceNow repository and have a synchronous connection into there, i.e., therefore tightly coupling them to those systems. And instead, they brought the data as it changed and as it updated into this domain, into S3, that we could do whatever we want with it. And the beauty of that is we're seeing it right now. Signet is now consolidating from PagerDuty and ServiceNow into OpsGenie. And the first thing that our team said was, oh my goodness, you mean we've got to now store off all this, we've got to archive it, we've got to give you access? No, we haven't. And by the way, we're just going to have repoint and pull in now another data source. So it's architecturally, it's very elegant the way that it was put together. And that example, I think, shows you right there.
Yeah, that's a great point, Cliff, is that you're not tied to any specific implementation. So as things change, the architecture is set up so that you can change with it with a minimal impact. Thanks, appreciate that. If you don't mind, Tim, going to the next slide. So we've kind of talked a little bit about your journey into a more sophisticated event-driven integration model. We've talked a little bit about what challenges and strains that put on the team to support it. Obviously, it's great for the organization, but it does require, and it does, it does increase potentially the number of issues that need to be addressed, smaller issues, albeit. So we talked about a little bit of the strain that puts on the team and kind of where that team was. We talked about the solution and what was put in place and how it works. Do you mind, Cliff, walking us through like the results? Like how are we finding that this is performing for us so far?
So I think the first bullet point we have speaks volumes. The incidents that we had, and again, keep in mind the reason of the incidents have a couple different drivers. First, we were heading up to our annual code freeze, and so a lot of new interfaces were going into production. New interfaces not only add volume, but they tend to have more bugs at first. So that was one of them. The second one, of course, is that as we head into the holiday with more volume, we get more messages and we get more transactions through there as well. So the first thing, which was the most important thing we had to do, is my existing support team had to be able to handle all the new incidents. And you can see from the slide here, we were hitting around 100 incidents a week, and our peak week we went up to 900. If we hadn't had this solution in place, there was no universe that could have been handled. Instead, the level one, they were getting prescribed to them. This is what you do. And, they were a little hesitant at first, but, within that first week, they came to rely on that. And they knew when to go to solution 1, 2, or 3, right? The other thing is, because of that, in the previous model, if they didn't know something, they immediately went to level 2 or level 3. And that was a huge strain on my team. I had team members who sometimes they were working, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, because they were being taxed by the 24/7 support we had. This alleviated that incredibly. My team, you know what? Some of them reported only working 40 hours at level 3. It was incredible because they had everything at their fingertips. They didn't need to hunt down people to ask them questions. Sure, sometimes they did, but not always. And key to that, you see, was the match rate. We went from completely requiring the team to go to run books, dig through PagerDuty or ServiceNow themselves, to you can see here in November for the whole month averaged about an 86% hit rate. That is, when an incident came in, Clairvoyance could find a match, run book, or a previous incident, 96%, and write something useful back into the ticket. Now, the first week, was it 96? No, but it was still, call it 70, okay? Pretty good. And we quickly built up. And so in November, having an 86% hit rate, 87% in December, and in January, we're a little higher even yet. But that allowed the team to quickly be able to close out tickets, because you got to remember, again, most of my incidents are coming from very discrete messages where I'm calling another system and there's a traffic issue. I still want to be aware of it. They can go and say, okay, you know what? You may want to just relook at this, try it again, because could have been a contention issue, could have been a timeout issue. And they quickly were able to clear through those. And we still required them to manually close tickets. We weren't comfortable enough to let AI close anything. So that's a phase 2. So keep in mind, not only did we have all these tickets, we still required the team to manually close anything out and manually go through any of the steps. So love this diagram. So what you can see is, again, as I mentioned, our code freeze is the middle of October. So starting in August, a lot of things went into production, and this is where you started to see our spike. If we went back into July, and I probably should have showed that, we were certainly lower than 30, but we were building to this. And so the mean time to resolve any one ticket was 31 hours back August through September. Our SLA was 4 hours. What we really needed was probably 8 hours. And so you can see that we were out of compliance. We were having issues. We had a lot of people working a lot of hours to get things resolved. And this solution went into production in the end of October. And so, yes, there were some improvements from the August, September into October as the new interfaces kind of worked themselves through. But starting in October is when we scaled up in our volumes. Our volumes for any of our integrations increased fivefold. we were averaging 2,500 and we peaked out, or I'm sorry, 2.5 million, and we peaked out at over 11 million. So that happened right around that November, end of October, which is when we put the solution in. And from that, all we did as the volumes increased and as our numbers increased, all we saw was our resolutions dropping rapidly. And so by the time we hit the January, you can see, through January, now we're down to probably, I think it's 3.5 million per month. But we're almost at our SLA and well within our acceptable time frame. And so it's just continued improvement month over month over month. And we've totally, with the 90 or 80, 87% hit rate now in January, the reliance on level 2 and level 3 is extremely low, allowing them to do what we need them to do, which is there's the backlog for level 2, and level 3 is mostly my project team. Was that clear enough, Jeff?
That's crystal clear to me. It's an awesome story. And then, from the perspective here of, shortening the onboarding process and everything, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about kind of how that's impacted you.
Sure. First of all, I will give CEI a little kudos. Joe had mentioned your offshore turnover was 5%, and I will tell you, on our support team, we are in that ballpark, and so we're not getting a lot of turnover, but we do get turnover. And the other idea is building this into the layers we have. I want to extend it, and so as I extend it to other teams, I do need some additional resources, and I need to trade out the old resources that we had that were developers into technical, but less technical and therefore less expensive resources. And we're doing that. And what we're seeing is the transition time to get those new resources up to speed has been cut in half. It is pretty close to 50%. And they have taken, to make them fully operational, it used to take probably around 2 months. And by now within a month, you don't know the new folks from the old folks because there's that much at their fingertips now. And then you can see down here again, I mentioned 5%, 4.5%, 5%. That is the number of tickets that the increase in the incidents that went up with the exact same staff that we had. The other big call out is, again, that staff used to go to tier 2, tier 3 for a lot of things because I had 4,000 batch jobs and now I had hundreds of real-time interfaces. They couldn't possibly know everything about everything. And yeah, you can look it up in the run books, but run books only give you so much. And so now with Clairvoyance, we have 95% of the incidents are resolved within tier 1. We set our expectations at 90%, and that was hopeful. Behind the scenes, I talked to the sales team and said, if I get 80%, I'll be happy. But we set the goal of 90, and we quickly, within the first 2 months, we're at 95%. So it was really impactful.
That's awesome, and I really appreciate you walking us through that story, Cliff. I mean, it's exciting to be part of a solution that's had not only such an impact on just the efficiencies, but also positive impact, on the team as well, and really providing them with tools that can make them flourish.
Yeah, I'm really excited. But again, this is phase 1. There are some other phases that we want to do it. So if we've done this much with phase 1, we're really looking forward to to evolving this solution going forward.
Yeah, actually, that's a good segue, Cliff. We actually had a question come in along those lines. Could you speak a little bit to what that next evolution of this solution could be in your mind?
Sure. The simplest of all is we have a lot of things that within our architecture they retry, but sometimes for things beyond our control with partners, they're down for a while, and we'll get a bulk of things that time out. And so, based on these, having the ability for this solution to automatically retry, to automatically close out tickets, and as probably a maybe at phase 3 is based on the solutions they come up, is to let AI actually try, solving more than just those low-hanging fruit. So there's also, I almost forgot, I had mentioned earlier, initially when we envisioned this, we talked about maybe a chatbot, and we quickly came to the point where that wasn't going to be efficient. We still believe that there is a room for when my analysts, when the options don't quite fit, for them to dig up more information via the chatbot. And so that is also an evolution that we still want to get to, not in the same vein that we originally thought, but as that enhancement to, instead of them still digging up the information, to be able to ask very, very pointed, specific questions.
Yeah, very
Excellent.
cool.
Thank you.
Cliff, I just wanted to personally thank you for your time today. I want to really thank you for your partnership and leadership there at Signet, and I'm just excited to kind of see what we can build together next. So thank you so much for spending time with us here today.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right.
Yeah, I was going to say, Tim, do you want to kick the slides up, and we'll kick it back over to Joe?
Yeah, Joe, if you want to give a quick overview, we've got kind of a walkthrough here of kind of how this type of engagement comes to fruition here. Joe, if you want to cover this quickly, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. So we've found that a successful engagement that reminds us of what we just did for Cliff typically starts with identifying the best use case. So we've got as a 3-step process, in essence, what we call our AI innovation workshop. It's an opportunity for our folks to sit with business leaders or other folks to potentially identify what use cases within their environment could best be improved or optimized via Gen AI. So we don't really get into a lot of the bits and bytes. It's more about process and understanding that perfect use case. And then once that use case is identified, and that's typically a 1, maybe 2-day workshop, we would then move to that step 2 and put together a POC that would, in essence, provide you with the return on investment that might change some minds about further direction. And that's typically a 6 to 8 week process based off of that identification of the use case. And then obviously step 3 would be, what type of AI tools could we use? Would we use Bedrock? Would we use Kendra? And some of the things that Jeff mentioned as part of that architecture. How would automation work? Would it be a chatbot versus maybe just a response on a ticket in text for the top 3 approaches that Cliff mentioned? So we've got this 3-step process that we find to be very, very efficient and very successful around approaching Gen AI in general. And last slide here, we're offering a free half-day workshop with our CEI team to demonstrate how our managed services for through Gen AI, what we call our CEI Clairvoyance for managed services, could work for your enterprise. So again, we can review current processes. What kind of tools would be used? Are you using PagerDuty or ServiceNow or using something else? We would brainstorm around AI use cases, what would make sense, and then essentially put together a whiteboard on potential high-level solutions, and then come up with a use case, a pilot use case. So Happy to talk more about that. My information is listed there on the bottom of the screen. And again, keep in mind that we're calling this clairvoyance for managed services. CEI has essentially created a repetitive or an iterative framework, a platform, if you will. So we can apply it to managed services. We could apply it to semantic search or chatbot or other architectures that might make sense in your environment. So wanted to make sure that I clarified what we mean by CEI Clairvoyance for managed services. We're doing that across the spectrum, not only of industry verticals, but of other potential use cases as well. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. So that concludes the kind of regular programming we have scheduled here. We do have a couple minutes for Q&A. So we did have one question that Cliff already answered for us, but we have a couple others that we wanted to bring up. And Cliff, these are both probably best to be answered by you, I think. So the first was if you're able to, comfortable sharing the average operating cost for this solution.
From an AWS perspective?
Yes, correct.
So I'm looking at my numbers. We've had it in place for what, 4 months now, and we haven't cracked $100 a month yet for AWS costs on this.
So can you give some context for those such as myself who may not know? That feels low. I mean, is that what you anticipated? Is it lower than what you anticipated?
Yes. I mean, obviously we're building our whole integration architecture, and so within AWS, and so this was not a noticeable increase. It was much lower than I would have than I expected going into the project.
Yeah, excellent. Good news. All right, and then the last question I've got here is just in terms of when it comes to partner selection, why a little bit, if you could elaborate a little bit more on why Signet, obviously there are a lot of partners out there, right? Why Signet chose to partner with CEI on this initiative, and if you could just speak to a little bit more there.
Sure, and you're right. There's a lot of partners, and we've got at Signet, we've got a lot of great partners, and we appreciate what they all bring. One of the things that CEI brought was, first of all, you were living my pain every single day. You were doing my production support, and your team was the one that was going to be impacted if what we did wasn't successful. So there was absolutely some motivation there for you guys to do that. Now, that being said, if you couldn't do the work, then that wouldn't have helped. And we've been engaged with CEI, like I said, since 2018. And I will say one of the strengths that we've found in working with you was of the architects that we brought on. And so we brought your architects on to a number of key products or projects, and they have been outstanding. And so with that, we have the confidence that this was the right decision. And so that's why, we reached out and we began the journey.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Well, that is all of our questions. It's all of our content. It's everything we had planned for you guys today. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who attended. I want to say special thanks to Jeff and Joe and Cliff for sharing this story, and Jeff for kind of guiding us through how this all unfolded. And yeah, we really appreciate the time. We've recorded this. We'll be posting it on social media and YouTube and sharing it with folks who are interested in maybe diving a little bit deeper. So, like we said, if you want to get in touch, Joe's contact information was on the last slide, and we will make sure to get in touch with you so you've got it handy. But that's it for today. So we appreciate it, everyone, and thanks so much.